How's everybody doing? Welcome to the fish room. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at our no water change aquarium. We've had it up and running for almost 3 months now. So I want to go a little bit closer, give an update on the tank, and we're going to test the water today. So here's a view on the tank, kind of standing a little bit further back. We can see the whole tank. We'll talk about it a little bit before we dive in and test the water and kind of zoom in on some things that are happening in the tank. If you haven't already seen the first video of me setting this tank up, I'll try to put a link or a card above us so you guys can check that video out. And also, if you guys aren't following the channel, make sure you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos. It helps me out, and that way you don't miss any videos. But first thing we'll just talk about in the tank is this is trying to be a no water change aquarium, and the way you can do that is by doing a natural tank with some plants. And this is also a project, so this is by no means like a perfect way of doing anything. There's certain things you could change, and we're just trying to kind of make a project out of this tank and test it along the way, but so far it's doing very well. The first thing you want to have is a very deep substrate. I probably could go even a little bit deeper. We have probably a good 4-inch substrate here, which is kind of like the minimal. We could probably even go a little bit deeper. We did use sand on the bottom for the most 2 or 3 inches, and then gravel on top. I do think sand being more compact is going to help with the process of actual things breaking down in the substrate and they're not being disturbed. You're going to get kind of gas bubbles and stuff in there. But it can work its way through and break itself down. And then we have some gravel on top. Then we went ahead, I've pointed some stuff. We have some stem plants here. I'm really bad with a lot of the names of this stuff. That was given to me by a friend. It's growing really well. You can see over here, it's like got 4 times taller. It was like an inch, now it's like 4 or 5 inches tall. Growing really well. I'm ready to start cutting those and replanting them. The moss throughout the bottom is really thick. I probably could start pulling from that. We do have like an Amazon sword over here that I took from the mother plant, and they have melted back and they're actually growing now. And then above we have some water sprite and we have some wisteria. It's a little light of a color. It's kind of, I don't know if there's too much light and it's kind of getting burned out, or there's not enough nutrients in the tank because there's so many plants, which we'll see whenever we test the water. There are some nitrates in this tank, but it hasn't gone up. If anything, it's stabilized or it's went down just a little bit. Not to say 6 months from now it's still going to be the case. We're at the point now where I'm going to have to start removing plants and trimming plants so that the fish waste can build up and they can start feeding off of all the nutrients in the tank. And maybe I'll have to feed the tank even a little bit heavier to kind of ramp up the nitrates so the plants can grow, or maybe I'll have to add a fertilizer. But I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. Set the tank up and just feed the fish, top the tank off with fresh water whenever you need to, and kind of make a no water change aquarium, or worst case scenario, maybe every 6 months or every year we do a partial water change. Let's go a little bit closer and let's check out the fish we have in here and some of the shrimp. Another thing to mention is I am growing all these plants here under a shop light. Just for the video, I turned it off because we get a lot of glare because it's very high up. I'll actually show you. We have up on the roof here is a 4-foot shop light, and that's shining down a good 4 or 5 feet to get to this tank. Right now I turned it off. We're just running off this Aquarium light here. This is what I run on my 10-gallon tank. But it's working well. We're not going to get as much glare. We'll be able to see the fish in here. One thing I'm surprised about, I have some of my purple painted guppies in here. This is a strain I've been working on. I got like a purple Delta guppy, and you can see this is kind of what they look like without the color initially. So it's just a nice squared off tail purple guppy. I've been working on to get more color in them and still kind of maintain that body shape. But for some reason, I've had trouble. I had tons of them, and I had like 75 of them in a tank. I kept some breeders and a couple babies, and I pretty much sold all of them that got bigger. And now I'm having trouble getting any fry from them. So, not sure. Actually, had someone email me the other day about questions about a similar situation with their guppies. I think they just keep eating them. So I've messed around with the flow. They were in a big 55-gallon tank, which I think I had too much flow in there, and they just weren't comfortable enough to breed, or the males couldn't catch up to them because the males are definitely a little bit smaller and slower. And then maybe they were just eating the babies. I'm not really sure, but they've been in this tank for about a month. I have added fish to this tank and I've added plants, so this is not all just growth from my initial setup. I did add a few plants. There's been a lot of growth, especially with the moss and the floating plants, but I have added some, so that's something to mention too. If you watched my first video, I have added some more guppies and I've added some more plants. Not a lot, but some. But I haven't gotten any fry yet, so I'm waiting to get some baby guppies in this tank. So there's definitely a really dense moss carpet down here where they can hide all through it. And this should be a good like breeding for profit tank. One thing with the shrimp though, the shrimp are doing super well. We have these orange shrimp, if I can focus in on some of them, and they have bred and multiplied like crazy. So like I said, we started this tank, actually put it right here. I added 10 shrimp and I haven't added any more. I added a pair of the purple guppies, but I added the rest of these guys. I added like 6 more from that 55-gallon tank. And then this tank is about 2 months and 20 days or something like that. But if you look at the sponge filter, there's just shrimp everywhere, and they're actually getting quite large. I may have added a buried shrimp to this tank. I can't quite remember. So it may have had babies almost right away. But I added 10 shrimp from my colony, and I had some big, some small. But now there's probably 50 to 100 shrimp in this tank, no problem. You can see right here the Amazon sword, the shrimp behind it right there. And the shrimp, in my opinion, are one of the coolest things. It's something I didn't appreciate for a long time, to be quite honest. I've had this strain going on and off for about 2 years. A friend of mine had a ton of them. He was breeding in like a 5-gallon tank, and he gave me some. And I kind of let them just do their thing. Sometimes they were fish, and they would have their babies eaten. Sometimes they weren't. But I kind of just maintained this strain over the years. And I'm really starting to appreciate it now with the planted tanks. Whenever you spot these brand new baby shrimp, it's so cool just to kind of stare at a tank and just kind of play like hide and seek and try to find them. You can see there's one right up the front here. Put a focus for us. Right down going to the gravel, there's a couple right here. I think these shrimp are so cool. There's another small one right there in the center. There's actually 3 or 4 right now. If you can see, I can see at least 4 right now. Let me know how many you guys can see. And I know it's always a little bit clearer on my end of the camera. Then once I upload it, you lose a little bit of the clarity. But if I look in this tank, I can just see shrimp every couple square inches, and it's just really cool. Another thing that's neat, and I never used to like it, because you'd see like the dirt in the front of the glass. But whenever you plant, like right here, I just put this down like a week ago. If you plant a plant right up against the glass, it's cool to watch the roots grow down. Let's see over here. It's hard to see now because it's darker. You can see these stem plants. We have roots going down 3 or 4 inches all the way down. If you can see like right here, that root working its way down. Up here, these 2 stem plants. I'll follow my finger. Root goes like all the way to right here. This comes all the way down to about right there. So it's really cool to watch that growth, especially when you plant them right up against the glass. And it's funny how well they're growing, because this is actually a harder plant to grow. But it doesn't have CO2 in this tank. It doesn't have any special light. The light's pretty high above it. I was patient with these Amazon swords, and they are doing well. I'm never really that patient to let them kind of melt back and regrow. Sometimes I don't think they get enough nutrients. I've been told that they need a lot of root tabs to grow, so I have put 1 or 2 root tabs in there as they've been growing, and just kind of cool to watch them kind of restart from nothing and then see the progress of it growing. Hopefully this tank I can get 1 or a couple giant swords right in the middle of this tank, and then maybe just some wisterias on the side, and then eventually maybe even no floating plants, or maybe just a few. I'd rather let the wisteria grow up to the top and then keep trimming it than having this float in the middle. But for right now it's working well, and I think I'm gonna need that floating plants so I can just remove them. That's gonna be like my water changes in a sense. So whenever these plants get really dense, which they're getting close, but they're not really growing as fast as some of my other tanks, that way I can go and just kind of take out like a third of them at a time, wait a few weeks, let them regrow, then take out another third. And that, in a sense, is going to be removing my nitrates from the tank, so the tank can be more stable. Now that we've got some closer looks at the fish and the shrimp, let's go ahead. I'll turn some of the lights back on, and we're going to go ahead and test the water. So for testing the tank, what I like to use are these easy strips. I'll put a link in the description below for these, but you get like 100 of them for like $18. So if you're doing like weekly water changes, or like weekly tests, or even daily tests on a new tank, they're super cheap. They used to be like $1 a strip. You buy like 20 from the store for like $20 in a bottle, and now it's like, or it was like 25 for 20 bucks. Now you can get 100 for, it's like $18. So all you do is just dip it in for a second or two, kind of shake it lightly. You don't really have to like get all the water off it, and just let it rest for about 30 seconds. And then we're gonna go ahead and, for freshwater side, we'll just line up all these colors. Basically what we're looking at is that we don't get we don't want to have too acidic of a pH. We don't want it to start to drop, and we want the nitrates, the top one, not to be creeping up into this 80 parts per million, this dark purple. We want like a pink or like a light pink, but it's never going to be zero. You don't really want to be zero. In that case, you might have ammonia. I can talk more about the test strips. These are real straightforward. You can do the different drips and stuff like that, but to be honest, for me, I'd rather have something easy that's relatively accurate, that I use often, than something that's perfect and super accurate, but I never use it because it's too complicated. And to be quite honest, I'm like partially colorblind, so some of them it's like I can't even tell the colors apart from them, so it's kind of just a waste of time for me. But these I can get a quick reading in a short period of time. Let's see if I can focus in here. I tested this yesterday, so I already kind of know what's going to happen here. But the alkalinity and the pH are looking really good in my opinion. That's kind of like, this will get almost that light color for me whenever I start to lose too much nutrients in the tank, or the nitrates or ammonia start to build up too high. And then this top one's the nitrates. That's pretty typical for me, to be honest. I don't like to keep my tank super sterile and not have any nitrates, but that's probably getting to the part where I would just start to do water changes on a tank. So it's probably around that 60 parts per million, I would say. 40s in the safe zone, 80s unsafe. But some people have tanks where it's 200 for an Oscar or something that they've never done a water change in years. The fish will slowly adapt, but we won't be able to add new fish. That's not what we're going for. We want to have kind of a stable tank, but there's never going to be no nitrates. So this is kind of just an update on the tank. I think it's doing pretty well. It's not like there's the nitrates are dropping, but I haven't taken any plants out of this tank. So it's 3 months in. All I've done is feed the fish, add some plants, top the tank off. Maybe every 2 weeks or so the water drops and I fill it up. That's a good rule of thumb, where I usually tell people, even if you don't want to do like your big water changes and get out the hoses and stuff, anytime the tank is low, you're going to get a bucket of water out, and you're going to have to fill the tank up anyways. At that point in time, even if you're just doing a normal aquarium, I tell people just to get a cup and just take out maybe a half a bucket of water, or just siphon just straight water out, and don't have to even do your gravel vac, don't mess with it. Take out a few inches, and then whenever you fill the tank up, do a full 5-gallon bucket and you're pretty much good to go. Whatever it is, but whenever you're already going to get the stuff out, even if you're kind of being lazy and you don't want to do your like water change that day, but you're going to take 5 minutes to go fill up the water, to chlorinate it, and then top the tank off, at that point in time, I would even just grab something like this. I use this all the time for, I used to have my fry in this when I did my rams. I filled tanks up with this. I move fish around with it. Get a few scoops, take like 3 or 4 gallons of water out, maybe like 2 gallons of water out. You may have 2 gallons of evaporation. Then fill up a full 5-gallon bucket and just top the tank off. So in a sense, you top your tank off, you did a mini water change, and this takes no time at all, and it doesn't take you any longer. Take a few scoops out, put them in the bucket, say you put them in there, dump that water out, fill the whole bucket up, dechlorinate it, and then just top your tank off. You're already going to fill up the bucket of water to chlorinate it, but you probably weren't going to do a full bucket, or you would do a full bucket so you can get the 5-gallon dose. But once you do that, you'd probably use like 2 gallons, and the rest you dump back down the sink. So just kind of figure that out whenever you're already going to top the tank off. It's pretty easy just to scoop some water out, which with this tank, I haven't put any effort towards it. I kind of want to start doing some stuff with it, because it's almost, I want to be a little bit hands-on. But it's definitely one of those things where I'm going to let it sit long as I can without messing this tank up, and see if it can kind of stabilize itself. The plants will start to really grow. We'll start taking these plants out, which is going to be my next step. Maybe even today I'm going to take out a portion of these floating plants. Maybe just take out a section over here, like all this, and then leave that there, and see if it'll fill itself back in a few weeks, and then just kind of start repeating that process. That's the only way we're going to start to get those nitrates to start dropping, is by getting some more plant growth and actually removing the plants. If you have a ton of plants in there and this tank gets full of plants, but you never remove them, you're not really going to help the tank out. It's actually going to make it crash. So that's going to be the only way I think possible of doing a no water change aquarium, is that deep substrate, 4+ inches of substrate, and then having natural plants, and then occasionally taking some trimmings of those plants out of the tank and just kind of getting rid of them, or you can start another tank with those plants. But that's about it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I wanted to kind of show the tank, show the progress. I'm really excited about the shrimp in this tank. It's hard for me to get close enough to really show you those. I think it just gets a little bit hard to, I think it's blurry when I get too close, but definitely can see them on the sponge filters, things like that. They're all through the tank. This tank's been super easy. It's been enjoyable. I'm excited for the months to come on this tank and to see what happens, better or worse. But thank you all for watching. I'm going to post some of my older videos here on the screen if you want to check those out. Like the video if you liked it. Comment below if you have any questions or if you have some suggestions what I should do next. But thanks again, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.